Thank you, everyone, for your patience. But now we are in a better shape to listen to Daniel as he deserves to be listened to. Daniel Alves is speaking about open source platforms to link data and Inish research approach from the Refuge infrastructure and the Institute of Contemporary History's Digital Humanities Lab. Daniel Alves is an assistant professor of history in the history department and a researcher at the Institute of Contemporary History, both at University Nova of Lisbon. He is the editor of the Journal of Digital Humanities and editor-in-chief of the Portuguese version of the Programming Historian website. He coordinates the Digital Humanities Lab at the Institute of Contemporary History. So, Daniel, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Helena, and thank you all for waiting. Probably the way Helena presents my presentation and immediately after the break will raise much expectations. I hope I don't. I hope I'm at. I can be up to date with those expectations. Let's start sharing the screen. Let's see if I can do that. I'm not used to work. I think you, Helena, can you confirm it? Do you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So what I'm going to present here is it's nothing new. Probably only the last slide is strictly new in the context of the collaboration that the Refuge infrastructure and the Digital Humanities Lab entangled with the diplomatic institutes in the scope of this project that we are now initiating today with this workshop. What I'm bringing here is a presentation in 3 parts. The first one is a kind of some notes for reflection, probably on many things that were already speak about from the previous presenters, and the 2 wonderful projects that were presented here and represented here. In the second part, I will present the Refuge infrastructure, and then in the third part, the Digital Humanities Lab here in Universidade Nova de Lisboa. Those presentations, both of Refuge and the lab, will be somehow to show a way that we are approaching some of the challenges and some of the notes that I'm going to present in the first part. And probably in this first part, I'm not going to say anything new, at least for some of the presents, but some reflections on this problem of sharing data, of linking data, especially data that came from the cultural heritage background. It's not new, of course, these reflections. We know that most of the times we are dealing with this dialogue, availability versus usability of the information. Today, the main problem of most digital archives, of most platforms online, of most websites, projects, and so on, is not the lack of information or its availability. it's often free on the internet. The problem is that these data are too often disconnected, discontextualized, scattered, and mainly it's difficult to reuse that data in other projects or to make it communicate, dialogue with data from several projects. And in some cases, projects that deal with the same subject, as we see here in these presentations. Well, most of this data also remains static, becoming obsolete or simply disappearing in a relative short period of time. It's not new, of course. In the last years, we see several initiatives to overcome this, as for instance, Internet Archive repositories, for instance. These problems lead to, oftentimes, to user disorientation, discomfort and disinterest when using those repositories, those projects, those platforms online, which reduces the value of the digital assets, the information that is already available. Also, it makes it difficult to reuse that immense amount of data by researchers, cultural stakeholders, or economic drivers, as the ones that are mentioned in the slide. This occurs because, as mentioned by Tim Berners-Lee when he talked about linked data, most of the information that is now on the internet is structured in what he called information silos. There are many different resources, of course, online: digital libraries, archives, institutional repositories, academic research projects, databases of so many kinds, and different platforms that deliver journals, projects, and so on. But most of these databases and most of these resources, although they amount for millions of digital objects, in the case that I'm going to present here, in the case of specifically of Rocio, it probably around 30 million digital objects, only from the 7 institutions that belong to the Rocio infrastructure. But most of these objects are difficult to connect, difficult to link, because of their different format. There are texts, images, videos, sounds, websites, among other records. They exist in different platforms, in different formats. They are available in different web systems with different protocols, with different metadata schemas, and often they refer to broad times and space that often also came with at different scales. So we can call this, and there is a lot of literature on the subject trying to incorporate the concept of big data in the humanities, but we can also call it hidden data, because the data is out there, but most of the times it's not machine readable, and of course, by the amount of that data is not also human usable. So because of its complexity, most of the time it's lack of contexts, it's missing linkage. It can be extremely hard to access, to analyze, to curate, to preserve this type of information. Of course, an approach can be an integrated approach to this, what I call here a digital humanities approach, but of course we can call it anything else. It's we probably don't need to invent the wheel again. There are open tested solutions already. There are protocols that were mentioned in the previous presentations. There are standards. So we can assess address the main problem. And the main problem is the availability and reusability of this digitized cultural data. For this digital humanities approach, what we aim is to extract, aggregate, and link data from all those GLAM institutions to better understand, contextualize, and analyze it in the cultural and historical meaning of these online sources. For this, we aim at a strategy or a policy, at least in the Rocio infrastructure and in the work that we begin to do in the Digital Humanities Lab 2 years ago, in a co-create initiative, an efficient strategy to the implementation of a more dynamic, integrated, and immersive experience of digital cultural heritage data in collaboration with relevant stakeholders, but also with the audiences. So in the Rocio infrastructure, for instance, we involve the GLAM institutions that already are part of the consortium, the research institutions, but also the communities of users in this process of identify and deliver contextually relevant digital content. Again, we are not inventing the wheel, but applying and developing state-of-the-art methodologies to harvest and extract information from available digital archives, building a system for the curation, enrichment, and historical contextualization of the metadata, and provide that information so users can use it in a user-friendly and immersive environment. Along the way, we are dealing also with the need to build, to develop a knowledge representation framework at a scalable and robust manner to integrate the collected cultural digital data. Because in our case, we are dealing with not with data from a specific subject or a specific discipline, but data that can be used in a wide variety scale of subjects on teams. We are also developing user-hand interfaces and applications to allow a dynamic and augmented interaction with this content. The goal is to engage audiences in the interactive creation of memories and experience, not only for the search of the information, but also to build memories with it, or to preserve memories about the past with it. And I think this project that we are now starting, it's all about that. So presenting the Rocio infrastructure, where we are trying to develop some of the ideas that are already present. Rocio infrastructure will aggregate information that is collected from a variety of institutions of cultural heritage, and we aggregate and contextualize that information so that researchers, teachers, students, and the common citizen can access this information from the point of view of the social sciences, arts, and humanities. Since 2014, Rocio is part of the Portuguese roadmap for research infrastructures, and it got funded in 2016, although the money only came in the end of 2017. So we started on January 2018, and the platform will be online at the end of this year. Rocio, which you can see more about the project in the address there, is a consortium coordinated by Nova Faculdade de Ciências Sociais e Humanas and composed by 7 other institutions, content providers for the Rocio infrastructure, from local archive to national archives to central institutions for the digital cultural heritage, from private institutions like Fundação Carlos Gulbenkian, and also web projects, the Internet Web Archive, the Portuguese Internet Web Archive, arquivo.pt. Rocio is also the Portuguese node for the digital research infrastructure for the arts and humanities, the DARIA. From all those infrastructure, from all those members of the consortium, from all those institutions, we collect a lot of information. We are now in the process of collecting all the metadata from all this information, from all these institutions, and probably the number of records of metadata that we are going to collect will be around 30 million records from all these institutions. I'm not going to be in the detail, but some examples of the type of information that we are going to collect are mentioned there. Of course, for this, we are implementing a set of technologies that are already available, and we use it open. All the software is open and free. The solutions that we are implementing are going to be also shared openly, as the vocabularies and ontologies, for instance. The software that is going to be built is also available. It's going to be available on GitHub, and it's a way for us to share also this type of knowledge in the process. As a brief overview of the system and how it's going to work, we are going to harvest information from metadata information from the content providers through several collection protocols. Some of them were already mentioned earlier. And through mapping mechanisms, we are going to build a database where we can index the information and linking that information that we are going to extract from the content providers. All the system will be accessible to the users through several services, a general research interface, exhibitions, digital exhibitions and digital collections, virtual research environment, and also through MOOCs. We are implementing some MOOCs with the information that is available from all the consortium. Finally, in the Digital Humanities Lab, we are trying this type of approaches. The lab has a previous background. In the 90s, researchers from the Institute of Contemporary History start working what now we call digital humanities, using databases and geographic information systems to study the history of Portugal. And in 2080, we made a survey to all the researchers in the university, and the results demonstrated that the need for a more integrated approach to digital humanities, to use digital methods in the projects, and a concern with the sustainability of the research data and the results from the projects. In 2019, the Digital Humanities Lab was formally created, and we dedicate our main attention to 4 areas: databases, spatial analysis, network analysis, and linked data for humanities research. In here, we use essentially, or we try to use essentially open source, interoperable, and linked data software, so we can implement projects that have these features. The goal is to build and make available sustainable and reusable data sets from a variety of arts, humanities, and social sciences projects, using international standards, metadata sharing protocols, stable ontologies, some controlled vocabularies, and user-friendly interfaces. One of the tools that we use in most of the projects is Omeka and the interface Omeka S, as this software incorporates most of the mentioned technologies. It supports Daelen core metadata, integrates several specifications, in this case images specifications. It can connect with several repositories, implement sharing data protocols, and also several standards as the ones already mentioned in the previous presentations. Here are some of the projects that we are building in the lab and making available. All these projects are already available. We are in the process of building a new project that started in March, Western Sephardic Diaspora Roadmap, that has obvious connections with the project, with the network that we already see here, Henry. And all these data and projects are now easily integrated with Rocio and other infrastructures because of those standards and protocols that we implemented. One of these is the cooperation that we started between Rocio and the lab, specifically with this project that we are now starting, Refuge, Migration and Holocaust, that it's coordinated by the Diplomatic Institute and integrates the part of the program Portugal and the Holocaust Research and Memory. We are talking and collaborating with the Diplomatic Institute, open to implement those standards and those protocols so that the project, the results of this project can communicate with Henry, can communicate with Rocio and other platforms out there. So thank you for your attention. If you have any question now, you can ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. I believe Inish is something to ask. Is it, Inish? We cannot hear you. Please.
Hello. So I had one question regarding the EHRI project, because when you talked about standards, you talked about the ICG standard, and I was wondering if you could also cope with the Sepieties standard in the case of photographic records.
I'm sorry, could you repeat which standard, sorry?
The CEPIDs. It's a standard developed just for photographic archives by the European Commission on Preservation.
Sorry, yeah, I can't really say much about that because it's rather new to me. As Veerle mentioned earlier, we within ERI we tend to only deal with metadata because we don't have the resources to handle a large sort of number of sort of scans and digitized material. Although that said, and I just brought on by Daniel's mention of Omeka, we have a few digital editions where we use an Omeka-based platform that also does have images and some maps and things like that. So, but for the most part, yeah, we tend to stick with ICG and EAD. Okay. I have a question for Daniel later about sort of more linked data friendly archival metadata formats. But no, could you just spell out the name of this format, please? Because I might want to look into it.
SEPIA.
Sepia.
Like sepia.
Sepia. Sorry, yeah. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
But maybe I can add to that we are also, Holocaust archives are also stored in musea, and musea tend to also use different standards. So what we have done in the past is look into, well, what type of descriptions do you have then, and how can we map the fields that you use with the fields that are being used in ICG to then still be able to import it and to see, because I mean the standards we're using also from the ICA are not that strict. They don't have that many obligatory fields. Like quite a few of the fields are optional. So you can choose whether you fill them out or not. And then we can look into, well, can we find the correspondence? Can we find the mapping? Because we also have, for example, in the portal, many objects that are described, which is typical for museums, right? That they describe objects.
I was wondering about that
instead of archives. So it does happen, and we're looking in it, but what we've learned along the way is that there's always a little bit of tailor-made approach, or that we have to look into, or that we have to ensure that all the mapping we're doing and the correspondence we're doing is the correct ones. So I would be happy to learn more about what you're mentioning and see how we can work with that. And then having said that, then we're also it's interesting to hear all the connections with Daria, and because I know in Daria in Belgium, they're also looking into how can you actually share the actual scans and digital representations of the archives without them needing to be integrated or transported to another server, but via all these other options that are out there for us now. So all of that is probably really exciting to look further into.
Yeah, we have various partners who, of course, do work with things like IIIF and have a lot of interest in ways to manage images and display these things in more effective ways. So we definitely do have sort of one eye on how best to do that. So it's always useful. But yeah, there's enough difficulties with the sort of high-level metadata without going to the really more complex metadata when you deal with sort of digital preservation and that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Well, that question from Inish, I think it's well important. We have some photos in the visa collection, but that's not the main material. But also the project addresses also a photographic collection belonging to the Portuguese Red Cross, And so we will have to deal with this photographic collection, well, in a specific way. So that will be a question to address, to think about it later. I believe, Myke, you mentioned you had a question for Daniel. Did I understood correctly? We cannot hear you.
Having a muted microphone is the
Okay.
bane of my existence at the moment, but I have to mute it because it's noisy here. So yeah, my question to Daniel was really a rather vague one. So we in the IRI project have sort of a certain amount of dealings with sort of linked data technologies such as RDF and Sparkle. So we have our controlled vocabularies are in SCOS format and available as XML RDF. But one thing that has always been a challenge is the lack of ontologies that are focused on archival material, or rather more closely aligned with the ICG. Some of the ones I've seen before that have done sort of cross mappings have tended to have sort of rather big gaps in them, where you use sort of a generic notes field to fill in all the sort of more archivally specific things. So I was wondering if he sort of knows of any developments in this way, or if there were sort of if the archival world will be better served by linked data in the future. I do know of course, the Records in Context initiative, but so that's sort of what we're looking forward to as the way they've been trying to adapt the EAD and EAC and EAG into this a linked data ontology. But I'm not sure if he's had any experience with that, or how it works in practice.
Well, we don't implement records in context in the.
It's very new, I know.
Yeah, and most of the technologies or the approaches that you mentioned are the ones that we are using, and probably some of the colleagues, or my colleagues from Rocio, they are present here, and if I make some mistake in talking about them, they can correct me. We use RDF also, controlled vocabularies also, this Cosmos implementation, and we are building, of course, a Thesaurus, a common Thesaurus that is built with the contribution of each one of the institutions that are present in the consortium. And they are very different institutions. The National Archives, we are probably collecting, I don't know, several million of records from them. But we have also moving images archive. We have a theater, national theater in the project, national directory for the digital heritage content, and museum, library. So there are very different institutions. They provide very different type of objects, and in very different, very varied subjects. And our challenge, and the challenge here is being done by Bruno Almeida, which is here in the presentation also, is to put all that together and to build a common knowledge framework for all those records and for all those institutions. That's why the project started in 2018, and we are, I hope, close to finish and to present the platform in the end of this year. And some of the challenges were not fully accomplished. We were not able to do everything and anything that we aimed in the beginning, but we are close. And using again most of the technologies that you mentioned in the beginning. Yes.
All right, I look forward to seeing the outcome.
And I think we are going to cooperate more because Rocio is cooperating with the project coordinated by the Diplomatic Institute, and they are going to share their data with your project also, and with Rocio. So we are going to talk a lot more in the next few months. I think Veerle has also raised his hand, her hand.
Do you have something? We cannot hear. Please switch your phone on.
I only lowered my hand and I forgot to unmute. So thank you so much for this presentation. I mean, I really appreciated so much learning about all the projects and then knowing that then this new project with the visa archives will be part of this as well. And I very much appreciate what you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation as well, that big data can also be hidden archives and that the interoperability is what it all falls or stands with. And it's really fascinating to already just make this exercise, looking at all the projects discussed this afternoon. You have like the national node for Daria, the project that is the national project in Daria, the Rocio project. Then you have a local initiative for the visa archives that fits very well within there, but that also fits within Sacha Zala's projects. Sacha Zala's projects also fit partly into ERI, as does the visa project, and then so it's finding those ways of how can you actually determine which metadata and pieces of information can be shared in an as easy as possible and as sustainable as possible way in all these various routes so that everybody stays up to date. And I find it just so it's not really a question, but it's also, I mean, maybe there are already some thoughts with the project here on how to go about this, but I would be really fascinated to see the mapping, like of how all those data and metadata will travel and where they will all end up into. It's fascinating. It's a really nice test case to start off with a project reaching out to already 3 major other projects to see how that fits in and how that can communicate. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel, that already like tackles quite a bit of the challenges you addressed in the beginning of your talk, which is one of the main issues, right? How does it all communicate and interact? So that's
If I can make one or two notes on that, thank you for the positive vision that you have on our project. I hope it will deliver that in a few months. My initial thoughts, the first slides from my presentation are not new. It's something that we are struggling. At least since 2016, we built 2 European scale projects on top of this idea. They were not funded. One was to deal with the First World War information scattered all over, and we were not able to get funded for that project. But again, the Rocio project and now all these initiatives are probably a good starting point, not so ambitious as probably was the idea about the First World War, and a good way for us to start on stronger steps and secure steps. One of the things that we thought about, and that one of the conclusions from all this process inside the lab since 2016, and with the Rocio collaboration, and now with this new project, is to start simple, to aim simple things. We are not going to be able to integrate everything. It will be impossible to aim at that. Even if we only incorporate metadata, and we are at this stage only incorporating and linking metadata, it will be very difficult to incorporate all the fields, all the information from all the institutions and all the archives that we are dealing with. So we set up a set of simple fields, of simple metadata schema that it's the minimum that all the information, all the institutions could comply to. And for that, we can provide information and stable information and information that communicates with each other. Of course, some of the institutions have a lot of information, much more information than the one that they are going to share with the Rocio. But at some level, we have to make some decisions. Keep it simple and it's effective, or try to reach the moon, and we are not going to be able to get there.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to pick up on what Veerle was saying about how it all fits together, I just wanted to mention that although IRI is sort of, for the most part, a metadata aggregator, we also have some APIs in order to get data out. Again, one of those is an OAI PMH feed, which Daniel mentioned they were using to get data into their infrastructure. So that might be an interesting test case to see how it all works, to see metadata from an institution go into IRI and then go out of IRI into another infrastructure, and then see how the round trip works. Because it's always fascinating to see how, so if anything gets lost in translation or what, or but yeah, it's technically challenging, but yeah, interesting at the same time, I think.
Yeah, it's also the case that IRI has focused some on diplomatic sources as well, both for an online course and I think for some edition, but I was not part of this.
Helena, acho que é o teu microfone, tens que desligar.
Okay.
All right, so I was just saying that IRI also has worked on diplomatic sources, and we definitely have an online course about it, and I think also an edition, but I was not part of this work specifically, so I'm not too familiar with it, but we could also put you in touch with the people who worked about it. Maybe Myke, you were involved.
So yeah, we have an online edition that is currently being developed about diplomatic reports. The online edition, Diplomatic Reports, focused on how diplomatic staff reported the persecution and murder of European Jews during World War II. This isn't public yet, although it looks like it shouldn't be too long before it is published. That's another one of our sites based on Omeka, and uses, for those who are interested, the text encoding initiative TeI XML format. So,
if I can just say something about that, we have very interesting documents very early showing that Swiss diplomatic channels were seeing massacres in Eastern Europe, and that there were knowledge about these killings. And in one case, this is the Consul Weiss, we even have very dramatic pictures, not a lot. So if you are interested, just make me a message and I give you the information. What were you saying before? And I was laughing a little bit about ontologies and this kind of problem. And I was so happy then when Daniel said, keep it simple. I'm a survivor of a very big project. We had several million of Swiss francs. And in fact, there were two projects that they were forced to make a forced marriage in one project, and there were two souls. And I was the chief of the souls networking, so it was the net, and the other soul was the normation and ontologies. And it was not an easy marriage. And I really want to say that I think that we make an output with the money that we got, and we develop also Metagrid with that. Not only we had also network tools for organizations and for geographic place and for concepts. So there was several stuff, not only Metagrid. Metagrid is the easiest one because people are normally clearly identifiable. By concept, it's very difficult. But what I wanted to say is that I will be very abstract and try to be diplomatic. Somewhere in our brain, we still have the dream of being able to describe the world and the reality. And this is very, very difficult task. And if you want to do this in the fourth dimension, which is time, it's in my eyes quite impossible. So I was very happy, and I still am very diplomatic what I'm saying, that the networking is something that can be done. I still strongly believe that each project has the best possible approach for the research question that they want to understand, and so they will do the best work for them, and then we should put it together. And this is consideration. At the end, we were speaking about languages. Believe me, I come in a country with 3 official languages, 4 actually, and then English, and just only to have historiographical concepts that works in the different language is in the same country is not easy. And I don't want to try to do it in several countries. So yeah, we should keep it really simple and try to do the best and be fast in network and be fit for future. For example, when we started the first our project started actually in 1993, which is incredibly early. And at that time, when we decided to take PDF as the standard for our scan, PDF wasn't a standard. It was a proprietary format of Adobe. And at that time, the internet was very, very slow. So we were scanning at 150 dpi, which of course now is a big problem because we cannot make OCR with 150 dpi. So what I want to say is that we should be fit for future development, doing the right thing now, and try to do what is possible with the money that we have, and try to avoid to do things 2 or 3 times. So I can assure that we now scan in higher degrees, and we will be maybe in the future able to do better results with OCR technology than we are doing now. So this is what I learned about this big project. And yeah, interconnecting resources works, and try to build a brave new world. It's a dream.
Thank you. We are arriving rapidly to the end, towards the end of the meeting. We have some minutes left. Well, thank you very much. It has been a very, very instructive and rich discussion. I hope we can start with, at least we in our project, we aim to be, to start in the right way, so we don't waste time and money, although as Sacha said, well, we have to, we live in reality, and we know that, well, but we'll try to do it in the right way. I don't know if Margarida wants to close the meeting. She's the head of our project.
So I thank you again for coming and share with us your project. It was wonderful because I think we all, here in Portugal, at least, we do the things after. And I think it's a good idea to have this conversation before we start the digitalization and the catalog of the documentation. And I hope we can work together in order to have a beautiful project and a really one that everybody can use and can study and share the documents so important for the story of Portugal and the world and the Jewish. So thank you again. Nice to see you, Veerle. After a year, we don't see us. and until next meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all. See you.
Ciao, grazie a tutti.
Thank you.
Estou? Vanden?
Sim.
Sim. Estás bom? Não sei se queres já parar a gravação. Estás a gravar.
Deixa eu parar.